And this is BBC One. Now the news with Reeta Chakrabarti.
King Charles III is officially proclaimed as the new monarch in a ceremony at St James's Palace, televised for the first time. In a ritual stretching back centuries, the King pledged his commitment to his new role in front of a packed room.
And in carrying out the heavy task that has been laid upon me, and to which I now dedicate what remains to me of my life, I pray for the guidance and help of Almighty God.
All 6 living former Prime Ministers were in the audience, which included other senior politicians, judges and officials. Outside, hundreds of people witnessed the pomp and ceremony of the proclamation up on a balcony of the palace.
Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
A surprise show of unity as the Prince and Princess of Wales are joined by Prince Harry and Meghan at Windsor Castle. And at Balmoral, the Queen's 3 younger children and their families viewed tributes to her after attending a church service. It comes as the date of the Queen's funeral is announced as Monday, September the 19th. And in other news this evening, Ukraine says it has retaken several key towns and cities in the north and east as its offensive against Russian forces gathers pace. Good evening. Charles III, who became monarch immediately after the death of his mother, has been formally proclaimed king at St James's Palace in London, in a ceremony which dates back centuries and which was televised for the first time in its history. The death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was officially confirmed before the new monarch swore an oath. King Charles paid tribute to his late mother, saying her reign had been unequalled in dedication, duration and devotion. He vowed to follow her example and to seek peace, harmony and the prosperity of all the nations where he is now head of state. He also confirmed that the day of the Queen's funeral on Monday the 19th of September will be a bank holiday across the country. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell has been watching today's events.
In the setting of London's original royal palace at St James's, the Accession Council, Britain's political leaders past and present with other notable figures, there to pledge their allegiance to Britain's new head of state.
God save the King!
God save the King!
The King joined the Accession Council gathered in the palace's throne room to make his declaration.
It is my most sorrowful duty to announce to you the death of my beloved mother, the Queen. I know how deeply you, the entire nation, and I think I may say the whole world, sympathize with me in the irreparable loss we've all suffered. My mother's reign was unequaled in its duration, its dedication, and its devotion. Even as we grieve, we give thanks for this most faithful life. I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony and prosperity of the peoples of these islands and of the Commonwealth realms and territories throughout the world. And in carrying out the heavy task that has been laid upon me, and to which I now dedicate what remains to me of my life, I pray for the guidance and help of Almighty God.
Concerning the security of the Church of Scotland.
The King took a centuries-old oath to preserve the position of the Church of Scotland.
I, Charles III, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of my other realms and territories, King, Defender of the Faith, do faithfully promise and swear that I shall inviolably maintain and preserve the settlement of the true Protestant religion, as established by the laws made in Scotland.
Watched by the heir to the throne, Prince William, Prince of Wales, and Camilla the Queen Consort, he signed the oath Charles R. Charles Rex, King. And then a moment of pageantry. From a balcony, the Garter King of Arms issued the proclamation of the new king's reign.
Whereas it has pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George. We, therefore, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
The King's Guard gave 3 cheers.
3 cheers for His Majesty the King! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
Following centuries-old tradition, the proclamation was also issued in the City of London. It will be repeated in Britain's other national capitals tomorrow.
Hooray! Hip hip!
Affirming and proclaiming the reign of Charles III to all corners of his kingdom. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
The new Prince and Princess of Wales and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have appeared together in a surprise show of unity this evening. They greeted well-wishers and looked at floral tributes outside Windsor Castle. Prince William also issued a statement paying tribute to the late Queen. He said, "She was by my side at my happiest moments, and she was by my side during the saddest days of my life. I knew this day would come, but it'll be some time before the reality of life without Granny will truly feel real." Our correspondent Daniela Ralph reports now on the brothers' joint visit.
Unexpected and unannounced, nobody had seen this coming. After the rancour and the conflict, the fallout and the friction, this was a family reunited in grief. The new Prince and Princess of Wales, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, together in Windsor to view the flowers and see those who had come to mourn the Queen. All eyes were on them. The brothers have barely spoken to each other for 2 years, but today something clearly shifted. Harry and Meghan walked down one side of the crowd on Windsor's long walk up to the castle, chatting, receiving flowers and condolences. On the other side were William and Catherine, doing much the same, particularly focusing on families and children who had come out to remember the Queen. It's hard to imagine quite how this moment came about. Perhaps the public outpouring of love for the Queen and the weight of responsibility their father now bears caused Harry and William to find a peace that has previously been hard to reach. It was an extraordinary moment of solidarity that seemed to please all those there to witness it. In her death, the Queen appears to have helped heal a damaging rift as the royal family comes together to say their farewell. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
Let's join Dan Johnson, who is in Windsor for us this evening. And Dan, what was the reaction of people there to William and Harry appearing together?
Such a warm response to that show of unity from Harry and from William, being joined by their partners. I think people were surprised. We didn't know what to expect here. There were rumours going through the crowd. There were ripples of excitement. People were really pleased to see any members of the royal family and to get the chance to share their tributes, a few words, to hand over a bunch of flowers. But a real surprise for people to see the brothers together after so much division, so many difficult days. I think it really has made an impression upon people here, and it's been appreciated. There have been a real mixture of emotions here. You cannot mistake that some people are deeply sad, are really upset by the loss of the Queen. There have been people here quietly reflecting, but there's also been a positivity about this place, a mood of celebration today. There have been loads of people here as families who've brought their children here. I've seen parents trying to explain to young kids what these momentous events are actually about. I've seen grandparents sharing their own memories and trying to communicate what this means to the younger generations. So we've seen families united in marking the service that the Queen gave, and I think what has really added an extra shine here on this sunny evening has been the fact that the brothers have managed to put aside their difficulties at what is such a tough time for their family and for all the thousands of people who gathered here to pay their respects.
Thank you very much. Dan Johnson there. Well, meanwhile, all day, crowds have continued to gather outside Buckingham Palace and St James's Palace to pay their respects to the late Queen Elizabeth. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning has been spending the day with those who've travelled to pay tribute.
If ever there was a moment for a child to live through history, to understand kings and queens, to mark the moment one era transitioned into another, this was it. Just a few hundred from the crowds of thousands allowed outside St James's Palace to hear the new king proclaimed. The youngest, Orla Elizabeth, 11 weeks old.
It's history, isn't it? And I think by bringing her down today, it's something that we can talk to her about. She'll obviously be spoken to about the Queen because she's named after her. And then it's something that she can then pass on to her kids.
So what do you make of King Charles so far?
I think he's been absolutely incredible, really, and doing all of that, what he did yesterday, the day after his mother died, it takes guts, and I thought he was absolutely magnificent.
A real sense of trying to involve the people, his subjects, to bring them along with the change, knitted by their grandma. Lottie and Isabel had brought their queens.
Why have you brought those down today, girls?
Because King Charles' mother is the Queen. We went to put flowers down for the Queen.
It's a moment of history. We wanted the girls to come and pay their respects and see the new king. It will be a changing era, but I think the public are behind Charles and King Charles, and it will support him all the way.
Not everyone had the best view, but we are all living through, experiencing this new era.
Thankfully today I'm not crying because yesterday I was crying very much. So,
what did you make of the proclamation ceremony?
I mean, it's emotional. Oh my God, Prince Charles is the king and the Queen is not there anymore.
Buckingham Palace was enveloped by people, mournful, celebratory, a swirl of changing emotions.
There are vast crowds, 7-8 people deep on both sides of the Mall. Everyone just trying to get a glimpse of the new king.
The royal car slowing so that everyone here could say they'd seen King Charles.
It was worth the wait. Brilliant.
How long did you wait for?
We think we've put in about 3 hours. So,
why did you want to come now?
I just wanted to be part of this. Just so important, just to be part of the moment.
And what do you make of the new king?
I like him. I like Charlie. He's good. Yeah, I really like Charlie.
Rufus, you just saw the king.
Yeah.
How was that?
Amazing. I won't forget it. Yeah.
A pilgrimage to the palace, flowers to remember the Queen, cheers to welcome the king. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
Let's hear again from Nicholas Witchell, who's with me. Nicholas, lots of emotion and tradition today, but the big surprise was at Windsor.
Yep, completely unexpected. We had thought that it would be William and Catherine, the Waleses as we must learn to call them, but according to Kensington Palace, they invited the Sussexes to join them, and as we saw, they turned up together. Now, I thought that Meghan looked rather anxious as she arrived there. There was some interaction between the couples, particularly between the brothers, but not a huge amount. They went to separate parts of the crowd, of course. But certainly this will be seen as a hopeful sign that the breach between the two branches of the family can be healed at this time of family grief. But I think we shouldn't jump to conclusions. There are very bruised feelings on both sides. Charles, of course, extended love to Harry and Meghan in his speech last night. The main event today, his attendance at the Accession Council, all televised as we saw. I think the importance of that is that it is an important part in establishing his reign. Also an opportunity for him once again to pledge himself to constitutional government, and a good place to do it in front of all the main political figures in the land.
Nick, many thanks. Well, members of the Cabinet have had an audience with King Charles after he was formally proclaimed monarch in succession to the late Queen. Liz Truss took her senior ministers to Buckingham Palace to be received by the Sovereign for the first time. After the meetings, the King spent time with the leaders of opposition parties, including the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Well, our political editor, Chris Mason, is at Buckingham Palace for us. And Chris, this is the start of the relationship between the new Sovereign and today's most senior politicians.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what we're seeing portrayed on the global stage is the British Constitution, sunlight being poured upon it, florid in decoration and steeped in history. And we're seeing the interactions between monarch, Parliament and government. So we see the new Prime Minister yet again seeing the new King alongside her cabinet today, as well as opposition leaders from the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats and also the Scottish National Party at Westminster. I know from speaking to those who've been there today, they feel the history in just the same way as the crowds do here, that a quirk of history means they happen to be in those posts at the time of a change in the Sovereign. What I can also tell you this evening is that the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, in office of course for just a handful of days, is going to accompany the King on a tour of the UK in the coming days, taking in Edinburgh, Belfast and Cardiff. A big moment for the two of them, and there is a political undertone to the Prime Minister's journey. Both the Prime Minister and the King, proud defenders of the union of the UK. And of course we know, to greater or lesser extents in different parts of the UK, there are tensions in that union. For a new Prime Minister, a Prime Minister of the UK, to accompany a new monarch on that tour will mean something for her personally, but will mean something politically too.
OK, Chris, many thanks. As we said earlier, it was announced this afternoon that the Queen's state funeral will take place on the morning of Monday, the 19th of September at Westminster Abbey. The Queen's cortege will leave Balmoral tomorrow and will head to Edinburgh. Our correspondent James Landale has the details.
Here are some of the key events coming up. Tomorrow morning at Balmoral, the Queen's gatekeepers will carry her body to a hearse, which will take the coffin on a 6-hour journey to the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh. The following afternoon, the oak coffin will be carried in procession along the Royal Mile to St Giles's Cathedral, with the King and other members of the royal family following on foot. There'll be a service at the cathedral attended by members of the royal family. The Queen's body will lie in rest there for 24 hours in continuous vigil, so the public have a chance to pay their respects. Then on Tuesday afternoon, the coffin, accompanied by the Princess Royal, will be flown to Northolt Airport in London and taken on to Buckingham Palace. From there, on Wednesday afternoon, the Queen's body will be conveyed on a gun carriage up the Mall. The procession will pass through Horse Guards, down Whitehall, all the way to Westminster Hall, where the Archbishop of Canterbury will conduct a short service, attended by the King and the Queen Consort. For 4 days in this ancient building, the Queen will lie in state on a raised platform known as a catafalque, and many thousands are expected to file past the coffin. Then, on Bank Holiday Monday morning, the Queen's coffin will leave Westminster Hall and be taken by gun carriage to Westminster Abbey. Members of the royal family are expected to follow the coffin as part of the short procession. And then at 11 o'clock on Monday, there'll be a full state funeral at the Abbey, after which the Queen will be laid to rest at St George's Chapel, Windsor. Rita.
James, thank you. And you can see full coverage of the journey of the Queen's cortege tomorrow morning on BBC One, and that is from 10 o'clock. The Queen's three youngest children, Princess Anne and Princes Andrew and Edward, along with their families, remain at Balmoral, and today, following a church service, they took time to read and admire the growing floral tributes outside the castle's gates. From there, Sarah Campbell reports.
It's not long now until the late Queen leaves this beautiful part of Scotland forever, a place which was so close to her heart. Before she starts her final journey tomorrow, people travelled here to say their own goodbyes. The Queen's family was on the minds of many of those here today, and this afternoon the castle gates opened, and in convoy, three of the Queen's children, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, Princess Anne and their families, made their way to the local church for a private service. During her lifetime, the Queen talked about the strength and comfort she found through her faith, and during the long summer months here on the Balmoral estate, she worshipped here at Crathy Kirk. In its familiar surroundings, her family came together today to pray. It was a short service, and afterwards the three families left the vehicles and walked across the bridge over the River Dee to the people who had come to pay their respects.
This is a family event, and I just feel incredibly solemn for that. They've got such a solemn time ahead of them as a family.
It's important that he's aware, because of course he'll only know really a king rather than a queen.
Yeah.
It's so sad, you know, and to see her go and it'll look so different. It's just amazing. She was such an amazing woman. She did so much.
It is still just 2 days since the Queen died, and the emotion was clear as family members comforted one another, taking time to read some of the hundreds of messages left at the castle gates in tribute to their mother and grandmother. Before returning back behind castle walls, they stopped and looked back. Prince Andrew, in a rare public appearance, led a wave, which was acknowledged by the crowd. A mutual recognition of the loss the family and the nation is coming to terms with.
Well, we now know that since her death on Thursday, the Queen has lain in the ballroom here at Balmoral Castle in an oak coffin covered with the Royal Standard for Scotland and topped with a wreath of flowers. It was said, and is said, a senior palace official today, a scene of quiet dignity. Now, the time here has allowed not only members of her family, but also those loyal members of staff, many of whom had worked with the Queen for many years. It allowed them to pay their respects to the Queen. And tomorrow morning, 6 of the estate's gameskeepers will take the coffin to the waiting hearse, and the journey from this place, a place that the Queen so cherished, will begin. Rita.
Sarah, thank you. The Queen travelled widely across the UK throughout her long reign, and it's thought that nearly a third of the country saw or even met her during her lifetime. One of the places she visited a number of times was Bolton in Lancashire, and our special correspondent Jeremy Cook has been to the town to speak to people who met and admired her.
Away from the capital and the palace and the crowds, a nation's quiet grief. Quiet, but profoundly felt.
She's beautiful. There'll never be another one like her, will there? I mean, tears just stream down my face, and you've got to believe it, but it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
There's sadness here, of course, but gratitude too. So many lives touched by their Queen. Telegrams and cards that mean so much.
I got a special one for my diamond wedding. It's nice with that Buckingham Palace envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah. We treasure that.
Her Majesty the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh leave Bolton Town Hall.
Bolton, in our northern heartlands, a royal destination over several decades. In 2009, it was Warburton's Bakery. A short visit, but lifelong memories.
She made me feel exceedingly important, and that's what I remember about her. She was all about me on that day.
Would it be ridiculous of me to say that that moment, that exchange, actually changed your life?
It did, yes, because I'm still talking about it 13 years later, and you know, I've met the Queen, and I remember when she walked away and she turned back to me and she said, "Keep up the good work." And I said to my colleague at the side, I said, "Wow."
The passing of a monarch is a loss felt in all corners of the country.
In offering our deepest condolences and sympathies in passing of our late Queen Elizabeth II.
In every one of our communities.
She was not just the Queen, she was our Queen for all communities, whichever faith you were from. In particular, I'd like to sort of pass my condolences from the community of Makkah Mosque and the community as a whole. She was our Queen, and we deeply gonna miss her.
Al, the bus driver, is a proud monarchist.
Good to see you. On your break.
His patriotic outfit, a heartfelt tribute.
I think the whole world is going to miss her. Really, the whole world is going to miss. They are. What can we do? We can move on, and as I say, support our new king.
Take a moment though.
Karen is all about helping and supporting Bolton's younger generation. She knows the inspiration that the Queen has given, especially on her visits to this town.
It makes the community feel like they matter. As individuals, as a community, as a town, that, you know, we're not just a place forgotten up in the north when the Queen comes to see us, so really, really important.
Last word to Tilly, a personal tribute across the generations.
Thank you for looking after the country and caring. Hope that you rest in peace.
Jeremy Cook, BBC News, Bolton.
Really well to make it.
Now, in other news, after months of deadlock, Ukraine's counteroffensive against Russia is gathering momentum, with more territory recaptured in the south and the east of the country. Ukrainian troops are now said to have entered Kupiansk, a railway city that's acted as a key logistics centre for Russian forces in the northeast since February. In some areas, the Russian retreat is said to have been a rout. And there are reports that the Russians have pulled out from around Izium. Moscow says to regroup elsewhere. From central Ukraine, our senior international correspondent Ola Girin reports.
Ukraine's rapid counter-offensive is gaining ground. Its troops taking some casualties, but also taking territory on several fronts. Catching Russian forces off guard, even surprising some Ukrainians. This footage was filmed by Ukrainian forces. We can't document the battles ourselves. For now, journalists have been banned from the front lines. Kyiv determined to win the information war. And images of victory from the eastern city of Kupiansk. This was a key logistics hub for President Putin's men. In some areas, Russia's front line has collapsed. And liberation has come. Everything is okay, troops tell locals in the town of Balaklia. For 6 months we prayed you would come, she says. Natalia, too, endured months under occupation by the Russians, who she calls fascists. She and her husband Volodymyr were freed by the counter-offensive, but still show signs of their trauma.
When you saw the Ukrainian soldiers, when you realised they had come to free you, what was that moment like? What were your feelings?
We thought we would never see them. And then our boys came. And they were so handsome. So beautiful. Especially compared to the fascists. I didn't know what to do with them, if I should hug them or hold their hands. I touched them and I was very happy.
Ukrainian social media has been flooded with patriotic videos. The national anthem, now a battle hymn for troops who believe that momentum is swinging their way. But the Russians still hold around a fifth of Ukraine, including the city of Kherson. This was the resistance on the streets back in March. It was the first major Ukrainian city to fall after the invasion. We managed to reach a woman still living there who says the Russians are starting to lie low. For her protection, we aren't naming her, and her words are spoken by a BBC producer.
Over the past 2 or 3 days, the military seem to have quietened down a bit. They are less visible in cafes and restaurants. If street fighting starts, it will be very dangerous. I want to see our army here and thank them. I want to see their victory.
Scenes like this are cathartic for Ukraine and reassuring for its Western backers. No one imagines a swift end to the war. But the Ukrainians have now shown they can beat the Russians in battle, not just outmaneuver them. Orla Gearan, BBC News, Central Ukraine.
Let's take a look now at some of the other stories making the news today. Hundreds of people gathered outside the headquarters of the Metropolitan Police to protest against the shooting dead of a 24-year-old black man in South London on Monday. Chris Cabot was killed by a police officer following a car chase. His family are demanding the officer involved be immediately suspended after the police watchdog declared a murder investigation. The Met Police says the officer is not on operational duties and the force is cooperating fully with the police watchdog. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has said that Pakistan needs massive financial support following devastating floods that have marooned vast parts of the country. On the second day of his visit to Pakistan, he described the situation as unimaginable. More than 1,400 people have died and millions have been forced to flee their homes. And UK scientists have established how air pollution can lead to cancer, a discovery that they say will transform our understanding of how tumours develop. The findings presented to the European Society for Medical Oncology could lead to drugs that block the disease. Let's return now to our main story, and the official proclamation of Charles as King took place not just in London today, but also in Ottawa in Canada, where he replaces the Queen as head of state. Queen Elizabeth made no fewer than 22 state visits there during her reign, more than to any other country. Our chief international correspondent Lise Doucette reports now on how Canadians are remembering the Queen.
This morning in Ottawa, bearskin hats and a bugle, a solemn ceremony to confirm a king.
His Royal Highness Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign, Charles III.
A new head of state, Canada, one of 14 Commonwealth countries, former colonies, which still keep the crown.
Thank you again for your welcome. It is very good to be home.
For 7 decades, she drew the crowds here, old and new generations gathering to greet her, displaying affection for her and for what she loved. From corgi fan clubs in the capital, Ottawa, to fast horses at the Calgary Stampede in the west, Prince Philip enjoying himself too, always at her side, embracing Canadian culture, including its national sport.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. She's really touched the spirit of what being a Canadian is all about.
But often, the Queen was on thin ice.
The separatist extremists were making their promised demonstration.
Sometimes the people who showed up came to protest. This was the scene in the mainly French-speaking province of Quebec in 1964, when separatist sentiment was at its highest, anger over English domination. The Queen knew it, never showed it, steering a middle course.
Ottawa is a small capital.
From her very first visit as Queen in 1957, she always spoke both of Canada's official languages.
Veuillez vous seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Better than even some of Canada's politicians. Another difficult legacy of a darker imperial past.
The Indians were so delighted to meet the Great White Queen.
For Canada's Indigenous community, the monarchy also symbolizes dispossession, discrimination, horrific abuses Canada's leaders are still confronting. This morning's ceremony to welcome the King sends another signal. The monarch's representative, Governor-General Mary Simon, is the first Indigenous person to hold this role. Other change could be coming. Recent polls show only a small minority of Canadians feel the monarchy still matters in their lives. But for now, it's still a constant. Lise Doucette, BBC News, Ottawa.
Here, football grounds and racecourses around the country stayed empty this afternoon after their governing bodies decided to postpone events to mark the death of Queen Elizabeth. But after the government signalled that individual sporting organisations should make their own decisions, some sport is going ahead. Our sports correspondent Joe Wilson reports.
No one at the Oval needed to be told. As the cricketers of England and South Africa readied themselves, there was a hush in the grandstands long before the announcer officially declared a minute of silence would begin. And then came the reflection. And then came God Save the King. This was truly a unique sporting atmosphere, but England's captain was sure that playing on was the right thing to do.
Sad couple of days for not only us but the whole nation and the world as well. So, I mean, it's great to be stood here knowing that we're going to be out and playing this game, not just for us but almost in memory of the Queen.
Soon England were bowling and succeeding. Ollie Robinson took 5 wickets as South Africa were dismissed for just 118. England's women play this evening too. Rugby in both codes in England also chose to play, with respectful recognition. But football authorities across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland decided that matches should not take place this weekend. Horse racing, Queen Elizabeth's great passion, also paused to resume with a sense of thanks tomorrow, when the Great North Run, with some 60,000 entrants raising millions for charity, will also take place as planned.
Our mission is to organise the event in such a way that it pays true respect to the Queen's life and also allows people to express their own feelings and their own tribute to our great Queen.
Queen Elizabeth marked and elevated some of the proudest sporting moments. As the winners changed, she was constant. And as her involvement in horse racing displayed, sport was her source of joy, as it is for so many. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
Let's go back now to Buckingham Palace, where we can speak to our home editor, Mark Easton. And Mark, we saw today both formality and informality on display.
We did indeed, Rita, and you will know that there is a vast sort of media city, village that has grown up outside Buckingham Palace. The world is watching. And what the world saw today was the formal handover of power in the United Kingdom, dressed in breeches and braid and wearing a most surprising hat. The language may have been archaic, the ceremony may have been mystifying to many, but King Charles, like his mother before him, knows that custom and convention can drape potentially destabilizing processes like this with timeless and reassuring continuity. I think actually that formula of the ancient and modern is going to define the reign of King Charles III. And that's what the world's media saw today, the formality of those royal proclamations and audiences, and then the informality of the walkabouts. Indeed, a short time ago, the King and Camilla, the Queen Consort, left the palace and conducted a walkabout in the Mall and at the entrance to Clarence House. And there you have in one day the tradition and you have modernity side by side.
And are we seeing there, Mark, the King trying to judge and respond to the mood of the nation?
We are, and this is a difficult time for Britain. We have two new leaders, a monarch and a prime minister, who have less than a week's experience of those jobs between them. And I think that it is interesting that it has been decided that the tour that Chris Mason mentioned earlier, with the King and the Queen visiting the capitals around the United Kingdom in the company of the new Prime Minister as well, will be an opportunity to reassure the country that although they are newbies, although that they are new to the jobs, they are up to it, and that the country is safe in their hands.
Mark, many thanks. Our home editor Mark Easton there. Time for a look at the weather now. Let's join Ben Rich. Ben.
Hello Rita, thank you. Good evening. After a week of frequent heavy showers, today has brought fewer showers, more in the way of dry weather and some spells of sunshine. There have still been some showers around, the speckled clouds bringing some showers across some central and eastern parts of England. Out towards the west, we've got more bands of cloud waiting in the wings. They will start to bring rain for some of us during tomorrow. But for the time being, we find ourselves in a window of mainly fine weather. Any showers in eastern parts of England will tend to fade through the night. Some mist and fog patches will start to develop. Temperatures typically 8 to 13 degrees. May get a little colder than that, though, across some parts of eastern Scotland. Tomorrow starts on a fine note for many. Any early fog should tend to clear. And then we are going to see some spells of sunshine. Just a small chance for a shower tomorrow across some eastern parts of England. Behind me, though, cloud and rain. Heavy rain at that, starting to push its way in towards Northern Ireland. But a southerly breeze making it feel warm tomorrow. 21 degrees on the coast of northeast Scotland. 23 or 24 across some southeastern parts of England. Northern Ireland will end tomorrow with some heavy thundery rain. That will then drift its way northeastwards overnight tomorrow into the early hours of Monday across Scotland. A band of rain developing across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, North Wales. That will tend to sit in place as we go through the day on Monday. More heavy thundery downpours perhaps across central and eastern parts of Scotland for a time. But this band of cloud and rain, something of a dividing line on Monday. To the north of it, cool, fresh conditions. To the south of it, actually some real warmth, up to around 26 degrees in the capital on Monday afternoon. But that warmth, quite short-lived. It'll turn cooler through the week ahead, and probably, for many of us, a bit drier as well. That's all from me for now. Rita.
Ben, many thanks. And that is all from us for now. We are back with the late news at 10:15 tonight. But for now, bye-bye.
There are some changes to today's schedule. Next, the one show, Our Queen Remembered. Then at 8, Elizabeth the Unseen Queen. For the latest information about all the changes to schedules, go to bbc.co.uk. Some of BBC One's usual programmes are on BBC Two.